Hello, my name is Mariana, and today this is a collective reading. And I know that we are past the full moon, although we are still in the energy of the full moon in Gemini that happened a couple of days ago. But I just had my big combined deck of tarot cards and astrological oracle cards, and I was not going to do a reading today, to be honest, because I'm very, very tired, and I was going to just relax and just recharge my energy. But I kept on shuffling just as like a meditative practice that I do. It's just something that really calms me and just brings my energy to this very peaceful state, working with the cards. But as soon as I started shuffling, I felt like my energy was going, like inward. And I was just, I couldn't open my eyes. So perhaps if in this reading, I keep my eyes shut for most of it, it's just because of that energy of the message itself. Because it wants to draw the energy to the crown, right? So it's a very subtle energy. And it's interesting because there's so much, like, the energy of today is very intense, but very, like, the frequency is very high, right? Because we are in this very high fluctuation of the tides, in a sense, because of the full moon. And when I say tides, it's like this symbol for our emotional tides. But being this full moon in Gemini, it's like it activated something in our mind that is also fluctuating, right? So maybe that's the reason why I feel so exhausted. Yesterday it was like this as well, and today it's feeling a little bit different because today Venus, which is in Libra, is making a conjunction, so holding hands and meeting the South Node in Libra. But the South Node is opposite the North Node, and the nodes of the moon, they're pretty much connected to the eclipses. And we just had, the phase of eclipses that activated that South Node in Libra. So today, Venus, which is the ruler of Libra, is this, it's almost like this very collective karmic cycle that has been commanding or conducting or guiding our relationships overall, right? So individually but collectively. So this deck, which is the one that I do the collective readings for, asked to be part of my meditation for today, because it wants to bring the attention to the crown, right? It seems to have like this change in the crown happening, right? It's very symbolic, of course, but it seems like there's some sort of opening of the mind, opening of consciousness, opening of the crown to other dimensions. Even though the cards that are here, they're just from the tarot deck, but the symbol in each card, and it's actually tying to the extended that came in the collective reading for the Gemini, the full moon in Gemini. Because two of the cards that, were there are here. And the very first card, in fact, that was figuring very prominently in the extended for the collective for the full moon reading is that, the first card here. So in being this King of Swords, the King of Swords to me, a long time ago, it came with this message of, this very spiritual being. It's like this very conscious individual that has this very, it's a very deep, very profound connection to spirit. But 2 days ago, in the collective extended for the full moon, this card was coming through as a very close-minded individual that has like it's almost like has like a crown itself, but not exactly that. It's like a self-entitled person that thinks they know it all because of the things that they have studied, the things that they have read, the things that it's like this self-entitled knowledge, right? So that's the reason why in the collective extended for the full moon, this card was like the crown was becoming too heavy on the mind, right? And more than just the weight of the crown itself, or the amount of knowledge that was being accumulated there, granting, in that person's point of view, granting some sort of title, some sort of like this mentorship type of validation, right? It was also talking about not having enough space. So it's like, so much information's been accumulated inside this crown that there is nothing left to be learned, which is, so wrong, right? We're always learning as long as we're here alive in this plane. And even, beyond that, I want to say, it's like we're always learning constantly, right? There's something new always to learn, right? We know so little. And the more we know, the more we discover, the more we realize that we don't know nothing, right? That we know so little. So there was this kind of arrogance, right? Based on knowledge, based on information, based on data, based on books and, certificates or diplomas or, whatever degree this person has. So the crown was heavy and the crown was too tight, right? It was preventing new knowledge to come through. And so in this reading, this card being the one that begins this message is actually talking about this dissolution of the crowd. Sorry about the noise. There is this dissolution of this crown. Maybe there is a dissolution of the crowd. There is this dissolution of the crown of, it's almost like this need to have something that proves that we know enough, right? As in like, having this degree, having a course, having something that is like, it's giving, it's proving, right, that knowledge has been attained, knowledge has been absorbed, which it's so questionable, right? It's so questionable. I just gotta leave it there. So there is this dissolution of this crown. In order for this shared path, which is the 10 of Pentacles, to be very abundant, but abundant for the collective. Because there was something also in the collective reading for the full moon that was talking about, a collective path that was, now it's coming in a very blurred way, but it's almost like in a very confused way, in a very non-productive way. So the 10 of Pentacles here is actually talking about how this dissolution of the mind, the dissolution of the crown, or the way that we absorb knowledge, the way that we learn, actually is beneficial for the whole, right? For the collective, for this to be this enriching path for us all, right? A shared path that is beneficial for everyone. So in order for that to actually be manifested, the 9 of Cups coming next, which is also a card that was in the collective reading. It was actually the opening card for the collective extended for the full moon. And it was talking about selfish desires. So in order for, this shared path to be attained, to be a reality, to be manifested in this physical dimension, selfish desires, they have to be dissolved as much as, this crown is being dissolved. And I know that the Nine of Cups is traditionally a very uplifting card, a very wish-fulfilling card, right? It is a card that brings like this hope for your wishes to be granted, to be turned into something real. But in this case, it's actually tying to the collective extended the other day, that it was like very individualistic and very selfish desires. So desires that are, or wishes that come from a place of, self-interest, right? And not the shared path. So maybe this is part of this misconception of, where knowledge comes from. So the dissolution of this crown actually opens up this gateway with the star for these selfish desires to be healed, right? So when this crown is, it's like it's broken apart, right? So there is no more limit to learning. There is no more limit to where information can come from. There is no, it's almost like expanding your external hard drive, but it's not external, right? It's internal because it's in your mind. But it's almost like updating your internal system so that it's no longer limited by the crown, right? So it's almost like expanding your consciousness to the point that you can retain more information, or you can like hold more data, right? Or even like just let this flow in a much more natural way, which is actually coming through at the very end here. So healing these selfish desires, right? Because maybe that's not been emphasized to the point that I wanted, but just to make sure that you understand why I'm not diminishing the Nine of Cups. It is great to nourish our own dreams and desires, but in comparison to the Ten of Pentacles, the 10 is symbolizing the shared path that is beneficial for the collective, for everyone that is part of this collective. The Nine of Cups is almost like something that would benefit just you. So there's nothing wrong with that in itself, but it's not benefiting the whole, right? So if it's something that is just meant for your own pleasure, your satisfaction, then that is going through this point of healing those desires, right? So it's almost like this, it's almost like this, what is the word? It's not reconnection. It's not recalibration. What is the word? It's like opening the mind, right? It's almost like receiving a menu of options that weren't in the cards, because the menu was being dictated by personal or selfish or individual desires. So because now that is being healed, it's almost like now it's like you can reach for the stars, right? It's also talking about like these far reaching desires. So it's almost like if you were still in this path of, the Nine of Cups, it's like you would still be using this crown. So it would be limiting your consciousness, your mind. But because the star is here, the star has 5 arms in a sense, or 5 legs, or it's almost like it's not just the crown now, right? Because it's also here, it's like the entire body, right? It's like our body is going to become more stellar, more celestial, more star-like, whatever that means, because it's like here is the head, but the crown is being dismantled in a sense, or dissolved and expanded. And because of that, it's like we're not going to just think with our minds. It's like our way to connect with spirit and the divine, it's actually going to go through the mind, through the arms, through the legs, right? I'm seeing like this 5-point star. It's like representing our limbs and our head, right? So it's like it's not just this connection that's going this way, it's like expanding through the entire body, right? It's like the consciousness of the body, not just the mind, or like the mind not just the human mind, but rather like this stellar mind. I don't know exactly what it means, but it's like that's how the healing process occurs. That's how these selfish desires, they are nourished to the point that it's actually going to feed this shared path, right? So that it's abundant, and it's like it's prosperous, and it's going to reach everybody, right? So here, talking about one more crown, and that's the reason why, you know, this change in the crown, it's coming through this message. Another king, right? The King of Wands. And the King of Wands was talking about rage, and how rage has been actually governing or like commanding these selfish desires. Because the way that I was seeing the King of Wands, it was like this bubbling up of, you know, energy that was, it's almost like a volcano, like, you know, about to erupt, about to explode, but the crown controls. But because the crown is no longer here, it's like this burst is going to happen, and it doesn't need to be in a destructive way. It's like it can be in a very constructive way, because it's like knowledge is now limitless, right? It's like there are limitless possibilities, because we are no longer tied individually by our selfish desires. It's like now the possibility is endless, because our crown is a lot more open. It's like now we can reach for the stars. So it's almost like our desires are going to come from these farther places of the universe, and that is bringing healing, right, to these desires. So because of that, it's like rage is not going to be, or, you know, passion, it could be that, right? Maybe it's not rage itself, it could just be like this intensity of emotion, right? Because if we think of like, you know, 9 emotions, right? So nine of cups, right? This 9 of emotions. So it's like this intensity of emotions, like just ruling, right? And preventing us just to have clarity, right? So all of this fire, right, can be creative, can be constructive instead of destructive. And I feel like this is, it's almost like this is the true shift in terms of the minor arcana to the major arcana. Because if these 2 crowns, these 2 kings are representing this shift, right? This dissolution of how we thought until now, or how our thought process has been ruled by our very intense emotions, right? Our emotional body always like about to explode, and kind of like guiding our decisions, or guiding our search for more information, more knowledge, so that we could act, so that we could create. But now that it's almost like if we were to create using the same information, because there is this limited space, it's like we wouldn't be able to create something different, right? We were always going to create something in that same mindset, in that same framework, right? So it's almost like releasing those intense emotions, because that's how this healing process of these selfish desires, they can happen, right? So it's like allow this explosion to occur, and when it does, there is this shift that happens again in the crown, right? Because it's like the self-entitled placement of this Hierophant, which, you know, traditionally the Hierophant is supposed to be the bridge between the mundane and the divine, right? But being the bridge can have a toll, right? Or can have like this it's like this responsibility that weighs, right? Didn't I say the weight of the crown is like, it's just too much. It's kind of like unbearable, but healing is here to dissolve that, to remove that arrogance, to remove those intense emotions, and also like this kind of like the obligation to be this, right? So, and I know that, you know, most people that are here, and most people that are, you know, searching for self-development content and all of that, and look for self-development from the heart, right? You know, just deeply wanting to heal, deeply wanting to know more about themselves. And, I completely connect with you. So I can relate to like the responsibility that I place on my shoulders to be on duty, right? To be the one who connects, to be the one who, becomes the bridge for this divine to be here. But it's almost like that's self-imposed, right? That becomes too heavy. So it's like this self-entitled position, role, duty, obligation that is no longer, it's like there is no more room. It's like if this was to be the rule, if this was the way to connect with the stars, it's like there would come a time that, our mind would be completely occupied with thoughts, right? It wouldn't have space for new information to come. So it's almost like this, actually, the way that this Hierophant is coming through is like, as in like, creates like this tunnel, creates this limitation, creates this this bridge that is too fixed, right? It's like it's saying, it's almost like if you build a bridge, right? It's like there are two margins. I studied this back in architecture school, and it was fascinating. This very phenomenological thought about like two margins. How do you connect two sides that are separate? Like once you create this bridge, it's like you're determining, right? Like through physical things, right? Through, concrete and steel and, architecture and engineering, you're determining that the only passage to the other side is through that point, through that gateway, through that person, through that vehicle, through that way of thinking, right? And that is too limiting, right? It's almost like, but what about the other options? What about, the collective desire to build something instead of, being just this one thing, right? And now the individual desire is almost like this one desire, as in like here there are multiple, right? It's a shared path. So it's meant to be built, through or by different desires and not just by one desire. So the change from the Hierophant, which is very restrictive, to this Emperor, it's like how this is dissolving, how this crown is actually opening space. And instead of being like this one-way bridge or this one option to cross from one side to the other, it's like this is like this open way, open path. The way that I'm seeing the Emperor, and whenever I see the Emperor or the Empress, I always talk about how the leaves, they bring in this organic perspective, right? This organic growth. And being the Emperor, it's almost like there is this arrival to the other side, but it's almost like there are two bridges, right? It's like one that goes one way and then the other that comes from the other side to this side. So it's kind of like this it's like this new way of connecting to the stars, to the divine, opening our mindset, whereas things that were traditionally taught in a specific way, didn't I say something about like a new way to learn, right? It's like because the way that we are used to being educated and receiving new information is very like one-sided. It's almost like there is only one option, there is only one bridge, there is only one way that we can receive knowledge, receive information, but that's too limiting, that is too restrictive, that is too it's not expansive, right? It creates this blockage and it creates this excess of accumulated information that it's not flowing, right? It's almost like, because the way that I'm seeing now, it's like this chaotic bridge, right? This very busy bridge, right? So it's almost like, yes, there is immense value in trying to connect, in wanting to connect one side with the other. But if we create something that is saturated from the beginning, and saturated meaning too dense, it's almost like, when you think of planning a city, It's like you have to expect that it's going to grow. So you cannot plan for the next 5 years or the next 10 years. It's like you have to plan for the future. And it's just reminding me of Central Park. When I was studying Central Park, you know, it's this very visionary landscape architect from the beginning of, the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 19th century. It's like the beginning of the 19th century. The middle of the 19th century. I might get that wrong, but don't hold my words for it. In the past, a couple of centuries ago, there was this Frederick Law Olmsted. He was very, very like ahead of time, avant-garde, to create a park for a growing, very busy city that would need this open and free space, right? So at the time, it's like the city of New York was already growing so much that he envisioned it, how it would grow exponentially and how it needed this free open space because the rest of the city would be very, very densely populated. And that's how I'm seeing this. It's like the change in how these rules are set, how our minds are being guided in a way, right? And it's like the knowledge that we absorb, it's like it doesn't need to be restrictive. It doesn't need to go like just this one way. It doesn't need to be like just tarot. It doesn't need to be just astrology. It doesn't need to be, whatever tool you have. It's like it can be more organic than that. It can be like, both ways. It's like you absorb a little and then you go and share a little because it's meant to be this shared path, right? So that's how it's growing to become something that it's not like this, defined concrete bridge or, this one way, that it's not expanding with how it needs to, right? To accommodate, the growing population that's going to become more aware, right? So it's like this is more organic and this is empowering. That's also, right? It's like when this free flow happens, it's like, yes, that's how we're healing these desires and how we are opening our minds to receive more, right? And to, share more. So yeah, I hope this was helpful in any way. I know this was a little bit tricky to convey, that the recent readings are anyways. So I am going to pull more cards to see where this wants to go. And also I'm going to pull from the astrological runes. So if you want to join me in the extended, I'll be very happy to see you there. You can find the link down below. If not, I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.